I went for a walk the other day down by the ocean. It's my opinion that there's no better tonic for the soul than to watch the waves come in and crash on the beach. It helps me get perspective and helps me see things that maybe I wouldn't normally. And I had a thought occur to me. On my channel, I talk a lot about narcissism, and narcissism affects us all. Some people ignore it, some people try to deal with it, some people suffer from it, and others. What if the whole world is suffering from a certain level of narcissism regarding COVID-19? Now, what do I mean by that? What if the virus isn't the problem? What if we're the problem? That's kind of a tough thing to unpack. What if modern man has become too weak to deal with things that in the past were no problem? In today's video, I'm going to share evidence for that. Once I went down that road, everything made sense and everything opened up. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the character Q putting out these very strange, very cryptic tweets. Let me shut that off for a minute. One of the most popular ones is "Watch the water." I found this quote from Nicholas Sparks. It is life, I think, to watch the water. A man can learn so many things. Yesterday evening, I put up a picture. After some research, I have been able to make a connection between the Fukushima Daiichi natural disaster in Japan and this outbreak of coronavirus. I know that sounds like two totally unrelated things, but the basic premise is this: low-level radiation over a long period of time destroys the immune system. It creates free radicals that make you very susceptible to all sorts of diseases. They have reassured the world for years and years that the low-level radiation being dumped into the ocean was perfectly safe and wouldn't harm you. Well, in the context of high-level radiation, that's true. Meaning it's not the same thing as if you were standing, inside a reactor when they turned it on. But low levels of radiation over long periods of time have been shown scientifically to be incredibly deleterious to human life and to our immune systems. It also makes viruses mutate faster and bacteria mutate faster. Now, think about that in modern context and everything that we're going through. And wait till I show you the timelines. That's the real smoking gun. Let's wind the clock back to last February. In January, the first reports, at least in North America, were not in nursing homes. They were not in crowded, unsanitary places. They were on cruise ships. Now, I chose this particular image to make a point. You see these cruise ships docked right here in shallow water? And you see these hotels in the background? What literally is the difference between a hotel and a cruise ship when the cruise ship is docked? Not very much. You see how close the hotel is to the water? It's only a matter of a few feet. It may be a little bit more inconvenient to be in the cruise ship as opposed to the hotel. This is connected to some type of a land power grid. This thing has its own self-contained power grid. In essence, it's the same thing. But when you get a cruise ship at sea, That's an entirely different thing. They have been dumping low-level radiation into the ocean for a decade. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, let me bring up the picture. This is the TEPCO plant, Fukushima Daiichi, Japan. They have been trying as best as they could to pump the water out of the reactor and cool it. They've been pumping seawater into a collapsed reactor. They can't do anything with the material. All they can do is keep it cool. That's it. And that contaminated water they have been putting in tanks. Well, a lot of these tanks have been leaking, and there's been reports that TEPCO is running out of space, and that it's been being pumped into the ocean. Plus, this former reactor is down in the groundwater, so there's radiation getting out into the ocean anyway. The low-level radiation being put off by the ocean over long periods of time has had a deleterious effect to the immune systems of people around the world, making us susceptible to things like mutated coronaviruses. I brought up this map to show the currents. Initially, people started talking about this with the currents bringing all of that contaminated water over to the West Coast. And lo and behold, weren't the first cases in Washington State? If I remember right, the contamination and the problem in Washington State predated the one in New York. This is an image of the contamination. One second. Let me get this right. June 2013. This is what it was only a month after. This is how fast it spreads. Now, I found an article from 1998. From 1998, winter, that details this exact scenario. And I know the print is small. I'll give you the link so you can read it for yourself. But it talks about 5 major problems associated with low-level radiation. 2 of those points literally speak to exactly what we're dealing with right now. The 5 points are infertility, weakened immune system, mutated virus and bacteria, loss of oxygen globally, and ozone breakdown. Actually, you could say 3 of the 5, because coronavirus has been associated with low O2 levels. Now, infertility, that's something we can probably skip over because that doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about here. But I'll go ahead and read this for you. Weakened immunity. On the correlation between low-dose radiation and weakened immunity, radiation physicist Dr. Ernest Sternglass states in 1986 article, it appears that perhaps the most serious unanticipated effect of fallout, now they're talking about radiation from power plants here, but radiation is radiation however you get it, is long-term persistent immune deficiency. And he clarifies it can weaken the immune defenses of the body at very low total doses, leading to unexpectedly large increases in infectious disease and cancers. Initially, zealous misrepresentation of the facts led the public to understand that small amounts of radiation were of no special concern, talking about nuclear power at this point. Yet these low levels are exactly the cause of weak immunity and resulting diseases. Authorities, however, couldn't ignore emerging data, and in December 1989, the government-sponsored National Academy of Sciences stated in a report titled Biological Effects of Radiation, I'll give you the link to that too, that there was no safe level of radiation. Over a long enough timeline, there is no safe level of radiation. Low, protracted doses of radiation cause physiological damage through the formation of free radicals. A free radical is a molecule with an imbalance in electrons which can destabilize other molecules, resulting in cellular damage and disease. In high doses, over a short period of time, like the Hiroshima bomb, radiation primarily causes direct damage to the nucleus of cells where the genes are located that control the functioning of the cell. In contrast, low doses, acting continuously over time, produce their damage indirectly through the generation of free radicals that destroy cell membranes hundreds to thousands of times more efficiently than might be expected in calculations related to high dose damage. So the everyday amount of radiation that is released as a part of the normal operation of the world's, at that time, 400 nuclear power plants is a very grave concern. Nuclear power plants must have releases in order to function, and these releases, even though they may be partially filtered, allow radiation to go into our air and drinking water and onto farmland and into our food. These everyday releases of low-level radioactivity by nuclear power plants has been found to cause several kinds of health damage, including premature births, congenital defects, infant mortality, mental problems, I can't say that word here on YouTube, heart ailments, arthritis, diabetes, allergies, asthma, cancer, genetic damage, and chronic fatigue syndrome. It has been linked to previously unknown infectious diseases and the resurgence of old ones by damaging the developing white blood cells originating in the bone marrow and thus weakening the immune system. Dr. Sternglass conjectures. Now, guys, this was 98. Listen to what this guy says could happen. Quote, with countless thousands of persons having a weaker and weaker immune system as the result of increasing radioactive contamination of the air and food chain, an AIDS mutation-like disease could become a new Black Plague. It is not inconceivable that entire nations could be decimated. And that was from an interview in the National Catholic Reporter, October 16, 1997. Under the section Mutated Bacteria and Virus, it is well known that radiation can cause mutations in bacteria and viruses. And what are we seeing now? We have the Kent mutation, and we have the South African mutation, literally in less than a year. Andrei Sakharov, the famous Russian physicist, described in 1992 memoirs that even low-level radiation could increase mutations of bacteria and viruses. His predictions, which were originally made in 1958, have come true, and we are seeing new ailments such as Ray's, which first appeared in 1963, Legionnaires, which is caused by bacteria not threatened prior to 1976, and that perhaps the AIDS virus at this time, they were conjecturing, could be related to some mutated virus. And they also talk about Lyme disease. And I'll give you this last quote. When the radiation from such isotopes as strontium-89 and 90, all found at Fukushima, in the bone marrow mutates an existing virus that invades the T cells of the immune system and kills them in the process of replication, the stage is set for the complete collapse of the immune defenses and resulting death from opportunistic infections or cancer. Now, I'll let you read the rest of loss of oxygen globally with this, but wait until you hear this. Now, Fukushima happened in, I believe, February or March of 2011. This is a Wall Street Journal article from March 17, 2011. Japan's nuclear crisis is fueling panic in China, where shoppers have spurred a run on salt in an attempt to prevent radiation-related illnesses and to secure uncontaminated salt sources. Okay, now I'm sure people probably, if they think back, remember this. They were afraid that they weren't going to be able to get salt that was uncontaminated. Now, let's scroll down here. They say something that is absolutely unbelievable. Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, and South Korea have announced plans to monitor fresh produce for signs of what? Of contagion. signs of contagion, not contamination, contagion. Now, wait a minute. Why would they have been testing for contagion after that? Why? What contagion? This is the paper Biological Effects for Radiation. Who remembers Contagion? This came out in September of that year, the movie. Talking about the MEV-1 virus. And if you think this is reaching, I pulled up some quotes from that. Let's see if any of these ring a bell. Dr. Aaron Mears. Somewhere in the world, the wrong pig met up with the wrong bat. Dr. Ellis Cheever. But right now, our best defense has been social distancing. No handshaking, staying home when you're sick, washing your hands frequently. This is 2011, guys. September, 6 months after, well, no, that would be 9 months, pardon me, 9 months after Fukushima Daiichi. The movie is set in, well, it's not set in, but starts in Hong Kong. Dr. Ellis Cheever, we're working very hard to find out where this virus came from to treat it and vaccinate against it, if we can. The average person touches their face 2,000 to 3,000 times a day. And this one, how fast it multiplies depends on a variety of factors. The incubation period, how long a person is contagious. Sometimes people can be contagious without even having symptoms. Asymptomatic transfer, anyone? It's unbelievable that this movie came out, this movie, Contagion, came out in 2011, September 2011. Fukushima Daiichi was January, February that year, of the same year. And that low-level radiation is now what we're having to deal with. That's what this is all about, guys. It's not the virus, it's us. It's not the virus, it's us. People 200-300 years ago could have dealt with this. People even maybe 100 years ago could have dealt with this. Higher oxygen levels, stronger immune systems. Our immune systems are breaking down and are continually being compromised by a nonstop flow of low-level radiation into the oceans, contaminating everything else. And that's why this has been what it has been. That's why it's affected China. That's why it has affected the west coast of this country so much worse than it's affected, say, Florida, for example. We have stronger immune systems in Florida. Why? A lot of vitamin D. We're not being continually bombarded directly with that water because we're way over on the other side of the planet. And we exercise more, take care of ourselves better. It's a lung disease. Low O2 is associated with low levels of radiation. This radiation being released into the air, into the water, is what's causing this. And it's also making the virus mutate faster than we can deal with it. So it's a double whammy. We're the problem. And I really wonder, if watch the water meant watch out for the water. And I'll leave it there. Like, share, subscribe.